All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for coming. Marie, that sheet over there is for you. Anyway, one for you. Okay, so the topic is free will, the nature of free will and determinism. Now, this conversation is an important conversation, more important in 2021 than you believe. You could possibly even realize why. There's been a lot of psychological and scientific analysis on the human brain. And there are some psychologists today that will tell you that we have no free will, that you can't make your choice. And this, by the way, informs a lot of public policy, that a child who's born into an impoverished family, he can't make choices. He's going to go into crime no matter what. You can't change the criminal inside that person because that's the nature of his reality. That there's a conversation of nurture and nature, and that those two things help define who you are, but at some point, you're just fixed in a deterministic type of pattern in a society, and you can never be anything more than the society and the reality that you were born into. Now, obviously, as Jews, we reject this. The irony, I think, is that in 2020 and 2021, the people that argue against this idea of determinism are the philosophers, because they understand the philosophical implications of what it means not to have free choice. Do you have free choice? Or are you stuck in a loop? Are you doing the same thing over and over again? Can you break yourself out of that loop? Why does God create a world with free choice? Why not just create perfect automatrons who do exactly what God wants? Why create a reality where you and I can err and make all kinds of mistakes? Right? Is that Siri? About determinism? And so what I want to do in this class today is I want to go through with you some of the classical sources about determinism. This is not my opinion. I'm going to share with you the opinions of the people that came before me and to see what they said and what they spoke about when it came to determinism. So the first source I put in there is Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is a famous physicist. Look at source number 2, forget source number 1. If you're watching this and you want the sources, I will have it posted in the YouTube link. In the comment section, there will be a link to the sources as well. Stephen Hawking is a physicist in the University of Cambridge, and this is what he says. He says, the initial configuration of the universe may have been chosen by God, or it may have itself have been determined by the laws of science. In either case, it would seem that everything in the universe would then be determined by an evolution according to the laws of science. So it is difficult to see how can we be the masters of our own fate if everything was determined for us? And this was his particular view. Now, I actually met Stephen Hawking in India, in Mumbai, in the year 2000. I was there visiting some family, and he was staying in the same hotel as I was. He was actually renting. We were staying at the Oberoi Hotel, which is like one of the top 10 hotels in Asia. And he was staying on the same floor as us. We were staying on the 18th floor. I picked 18 because of Chai, of course. I'm not sure why he did, but there was like 40 floors in the hotel, and he was like down the hallway from us. So, if you don't know anything about his life, he's a brilliant scientist who later became a paraplegic and still continued his work. His daughter actually wrote a series of children's book with him on science called George's Secret Key to the Universe, which is a great book for young kids who need inspiration about studying science and so on and so forth. I thought those books were excellent. But he himself was very much an atheist and was also very much a determinist, as you see over here, that he believed that we have no free will. That even if you believe that there's a God or science, there's no room in that system for us to have bechira. There's no room for us to have free will. Well, the question is why? Why is it that if you're a scientist or a believer in God, according to his view, we obviously don't agree with him, but why would he take that position? So there's something called omniscience. You believe in God? There's something called omniscience, which means that God knows everything, right? He's omnipotent. Omni means all. Omnipotent means all powerful. Omniscience means all knowing. So if God is all powerful and all knowing, how is it that I have free will? But how can we have free will if he knows exactly what's going to happen? That's the question I always get all the time.
We have free will between bad and good. Like, if you want to do like good things or bad things, but I think all the other things are just determined.
Okay, so.
He knows everything, but not everything that we're thinking.
No, everything means everything what you're thinking also.
agree with, but we don't know what we're thinking in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, no, but he does. You don't know, but he does. Because for him, the past, the present, and the future is all happening at once. God doesn't live right now in
We
time.
know that.
Because God is outside of time. He created it. It's like this. For example, let's say I created a video game, right? And my video game has all kinds of rules.
Yeah.
Okay, you jump and you hit this, you this and that. Now, am I going to be defined by the rules in the video game? No. I'm outside of the video game. Therefore, God is the programmer outside of the video game, life, reality. And therefore, the rules that work for us don't work for him. He's the programmer. So he's not going to live in a world of time. Time is very much a construct that is part of nature and the universe that we live in. And it works like this. There's only this moment right here, right now. We don't live in the past. We don't live in the future. We're living right here in the present. For God, the past, the present, and the future is all happening at once. There is no difference for him. It's all, he sees everything at once.
For what purpose or for what reason will God create human if they are going to have no free will and they will be like a robot? I mean, let's imagine us. We're going tomorrow to move to a house that is robots that are going to do things. How long do you think we can stay this out before we go crazy? We need something that enriches us. And I don't think about how I enrich God. God doesn't need me, but he does need me. Right? Because otherwise he would have created me. There is a reason why he created me. Because he needed me in order to see how the things that he created maybe work.
We can't say that. We can't say God needs,
Exactly.
by the way,
I don't
right?
know.
God needs nothing.
That's
Although
right.
if you have a need, then there you wouldn't be omni.
I'm speaking in human language.
Right.
not in God's
Got it.
language.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that he gives us free will because he wants to see with what he gave us to live with, to go and pick up philosophy, whatever you want to pick up, and what do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them will do terrible things. Some of them will do great.
So for
things.
God created us so he could have something to watch.
What?
God created some things so that he has something to watch.
That he can relate that maybe. I don't know what God why. But I say he would not have created us
I hear that.
if we would have been robots.
But he created the angels.
And what are the angels exactly?
Do
We still don't know.
well, I'm saying do angels?
They don't live here with us.
That's true, but we only live on one plane. It's kind of like an ant, right? When an ant walks around this little anthill, he thinks that's the whole world. He doesn't realize there's a much bigger forest, city, state, country, continent, earth, other planets. This is beyond his capacity. And similarly, for us, we also live in a reality which is very limited, right? We are limited. We have no idea, is this the only planet of life? Are there other planets of life? Are there other universes? Is it only one universe? There's limitations to what we can possibly understand. And certainly I believe in 100 years from now, we'll understand very different than what we understand right now. And God will keep seeing progress, but certainly the way we understand things is limited. And therefore, so much of this conversation is going to be predicated on the Mesorah, the sources that we have to try to understand it. Because without it, we can't have a conversation. We're stuck. Because it is a problem. If God knows everything, then there's no room for me to have free will because he knows the ending. He knows when to choose already.
So how do we, but when we're growing,
Yes.
God knows we're growing and we're going to change, we're going to be better.
If God knows everything, right, then one can argue, and I don't argue this, but one could argue that if he knows everything, then I don't have free will because he knows exactly what I'm going to choose.
But maybe he doesn't really care.
He definitely. We would argue that he definitely. I would argue that he does care, and that in the same way that your existence, right, is you would take for granted, but I would say that your existence is such because God is thinking about you at this moment, and that if you weren't in his mind's eye, if God wasn't thinking about me, you, and everyone sitting in this room, we would not be here having this conversation. That as much as we want to believe that things just exist in the material world for the sake of the material world existing, on a spiritual plane, I don't accept that. That everything that exists should not exist. As a matter of fact, the second law of thermodynamics is that the world is created, the universe is created in a state of chaos, which means that things don't get better over time, they get worse over time. And there should be no life, there should be no organized life, there shouldn't be no intelligent life in the universe. But since you and I are here, and we possess intelligent life, and while it's true, yes, we are aging, we are getting older, but it's all part of a process for something bigger and greater. That's not the nature of things. That's not the universe that you and I live in. And therefore, things should be getting worse over time, not better over time.
They
Should be getting worse, not better over time.
Why?
Because that's the nature of the physical world. If we cleaned this room up and we left it and came back for a week later, it would be dirty. There'd be dust on the floor, there'd be dust on the walls. No matter what we do, over time, things get worse, not better. And it's nature. The nature of the world is, but you leave things alone, they will get worse. They'll decompose. That is the world that God created. Now, I have the ability of choosing to fix those things, right? I could keep eating poorly, or I could start eating better. I could stop exercise, or I could choose to go exercise, right? I could choose. Because in Judaism, we believe that if you chose to have the physique of a gorilla, right, you can choose to have that. And the only reason why you don't have it is because you chose not to have it. But what the scientists are saying, what Stephen Hawking is saying, is that no, that the only reason why you would have the physique of a gorilla is because of your genes and your DNA predisposition. Now, there is some truth to that.
You can't become physically gorilla.
No, not. I said that. You're right. You could not become a gorilla, but you can work towards having a certain physique that's ki'ilu like you're a gorilla. I know people. I can introduce you to them that have the physique of a grown gorilla. They're ginormous, and they're eating 4,000 calories a day and 50.
All limitations we can't change. I mean, unless you say,
They're
I'm
taking
a
steroids.
woman, but I
They are.
but I choose to be a man or something like that. It's really not.
Someone sent me a meme, which I'll share with you later. It was a picture of what looked like a woman, white, with long hair, and it's really a man. And on the other side, it was this is a man who identifies as a woman. And on the other side was a white supremacist, and it was an image of a woman who was black and holding a machine gun. We live in a world where there's nothing defines you anymore, right? But
There are biological.
of course there are I'm not saying there aren't any, but I'm saying that those are the biological realities. Doesn't define what I am. It gives me the ability of identifying with a part of my identity. But I'll give you an example. I didn't grow up religious, and certainly rabbis were not on my top 2 lists of things to do as a kid. I hated rabbis. Sorry, I never liked them. I just never did. I never connected to them. I never liked rabbis.
I didn't like rabbi.
Yeah. So this is not because I was depressed, and I'm very happy. I love doing what I do.
It's a different type of rabbi.
I try to be a little different, correct? Right? But I don't think if you looked at my nature is definitely not to be this. Absolutely not. The way I was raised, my community, my upbringing, my education, my experiences, my friends, this was definitely not that. I was on a very different path. I wanted to be a doctor. I was a bio major. I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. This was definitely not in the cards for me. And anyone who knew me back then, when they know that I'm a rabbi, they laugh. How did you end up becoming a rabbi? My best friend growing up was Chinese, Frederick Tang. I still speak to him today. We're like brothers. Love that guy.
What does he do now?
He works for the U.S. Government. He is a network engineer, and he's tasked with protecting the West Coast missile silos from hackers attacking the U.S. government's missiles and launching them accidentally. That's what he does. Anyways, so we used to build computers together. Anyway, question is like this. Look at number 3. I got 2 questions for you. According to Stephen Hawking and Determinists, in the deterministic universe, is it possible for a person to be fully morally responsible for his actions? How do you have morality if you're not responsible for your actions? How could you prosecute someone for murder, for stealing, if they're not responsible for their actions?
They are.
I agree with you, but meaning from the position that someone takes where there is no free will, according to them, how is anyone morally responsible? Do you hear the question? Number 2, This year, as is often done in the past, Mark makes a plan to cheat on his taxes. Is he fully morally responsible for his actions? If you're taking the deterministic view that you're determined, that your choices are determined for you, he can't be punished. And this is the problem. If you believe that God knows everything, he can never punish you. Because he programmed you to be the way you are. It's like me building a robot and telling the robot to go and crash into that car or to go and cheat on his test.
Well, if you take the assumption that God created us, determined already in advance how it is. It's not. God always gave us the free will.
Yes.
He always put it forward to us, and we choose. And moralities will be the effect of it.
I'm not a determinist. I'm making the argument for the determinists. How do they deal with that? Like, this is an issue from a philosophical perspective. Robin, you want to say something?
No, there were different graduations of gradations of this, what you're talking about in faith, because people get sick, people get hit by a car, and things like that. Certain things you're not the master of. Sometimes it is just fate. Sometimes things just happen.
So Robin is making a call. She's making a Talmudic distinction. She's making a Talmudic distinction, right, between me making my choices and the circumstances around me forcing me into circumstances. I can't control that, but really that other person who made that mistake and crashed into your car made that choice on some level. To wake up that day, to go to work, to get onto that car, to get into that lane, and chose to look at the phone and not at the wheel. That's a choice they made. So you're asking about even the things that happen around us, right, are often an expression of someone else's free will impacting my free will. But a better example would be, right, so that's a better example. Let's say someone gets sick. Someone is born with a genetic condition. That's for sure determined, 100%. Now, but the free will would be, how does that person respond to the circumstances that they're in?
Behavior is one thing. Of course, we're responsible for our behavior and our actions.
But if you're a pure determinist, you're
I
not.
don't know. Maybe there's something in between, not a pure determinist or a pure person who believes that I can do anything I want to do.
So good. So you've all just fell into my trap of just joking around. I'm just trying to set a stage. So let's look at Devarim for a second. This is God saying, "See, I set before you today life and goodness, death and evil. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws, that you will live and increase. And the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. This day I call heaven and earth witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." If there is no free will, then how could you choose life? Right? You're either born a Rasha or born a Tzaddik. You're born a righteous person or born a wicked person. Okay, so my argument is going to be this verse over here. This verse is setting the stage for us. That in the Torah perspective is that we believe that, of course, there are circumstances that I can't change. I can't choose my parents. Your parents, I'm sorry, for better or for worse, those are the parents you needed to have. And the challenges that they created with you, them, your siblings, the community, education, circumstances, were exactly what you needed to become the greatest expression of yourself. How you responded to your parents and the circumstances that you found yourself in, that's utterly up to you. And you can't control that. So there's certain things that I can't control, but my response, my behavior, my reaction to the circumstances that I'm in, that's what I'm in control of. And we're going to double click on that as well. Look at the Ramban. This is what he writes in Bereshit. He says, "For the living, mobile creatures have a certain quality that make them similar to intelligent beings, since they can choose what will benefit them and nourish them." So he's talking about animals. And they flee from pain and death. So he's saying, the Ramban is saying that even animals on some level have bechira. That even animals have some expression of free will. That even though it's true, a lion can never choose to not be. There's no lion that's going to say, "I identify with being a gorilla." There's no gorilla going to say that I identify with being a cat. In the world of nature, things operate a certain way, but even within there's still a limited amount of bechira, free will, that these animals have. So even animals have some level of free will from a Jewish perspective. Let's look at Rabbi Tatz. Rabbi Tatz wrote a really great, an amazing book called Free Will, which goes through all of the sources. It's very long and very tedious, but if you want to really delve deeper into the mystical and philosophical sources, he has it all laid out for you. But this is one quote that I think is important. He says, of course, there are many things outside the realm of morality which you can choose. But those choices are purely technical. Certainly, you can choose a particular flavor of ice cream, for example, or which socks you're going to wear today. But those choices are not uniquely human. Animals also choose options like which food to eat and where to sleep. Those areas have no inner meaning. They are mechanical issues. Here we're talking about the unique free will of human beings, the faculty which makes you unlike an animal, the area in which animals cannot make any choice in the area of morality. No animal chooses between right and wrong. No animal battles to overcome its lower self and achieve a more spiritual state by means of its moral ideals. That is exactly the area of what we mean when we talk about human free will. The battleground of human free will is precisely the area of moral ordeals, the striving for a higher values against the pull of our lower selves. So when we're talking about bechira, it's not the free will to do whatever you want, because there's limitations. This is what Robin was saying. There's small areas where I can't choose. So for example, you think that you woke up this morning and you chose the clothing that you're wearing right now. I'm going to say that that's not even part of your free will, that's part of your nature. Because if you were born in China, you may think the clothing you're wearing right now looks ridiculous. And if you were born in South America, certainly you have a very different fashion sense than being born in Spain and Italy and so on and so forth. You wear the things that you wear because of the culture or community that you came from, and those things are that you find appealing and interesting and so on and so forth. But had you been born someplace else, your wardrobe would be completely different. Is this an expression? Is this an expression of my choice, or is it an expression of my society and community that I'm living in?
It's an influence.
Oh, for sure, it's an influence. It's a massive influence.
But still, I see
Yeah.
people walking around with crazy things.
Oh,
That's their choice.
You're right. That's because that's generational things. But like most people, your generation, are wearing similar type of stuff. They're probably shopping in similar places. They're wearing similar styles. There's a spectrum, but it's within a certain limitation, right? You're not going to dye your hair blue right now like all the kids are, right?
Some people do.
You're going to dye your hair blue?
And there are individuals who just choose.
Your peer.
My peer?
Yeah.
Your peer, you mean the same age?
Yeah, like your peer, like meaning your world, like your,
Syrian peer.
whatever your peer is.
Individual.
I'm talking about your world. That's
Jewish.
right. That's all those things. If you were Muslim and a Pakistani, you would be dressed very differently.
That's a choice.
No, so I'm saying that even there, of course, there's some choice, but you don't realize how much of that choice is already determined by your community, environment, belief, and so on and so forth. That's all I'm saying.
People will get up and cross the street. People cross the street. They can be for the community, they can do everything, and one day, people are surprised because the person crossed the street, and he's not like that anymore. He made his choice. He made a free will choice not to be like that. He would belong. If he saw another group, he might belong to them.
Right.
Because I think we have a need to belong.
We definitely do. We definitely have a need to belong. 100%.
Did God decide that from now on men want to become women and women want to become men? And the
No. Transgenderism, yeah.
Did God decide that?
No.
I don't know how we arrived to this point.
Why do we? I could give a class on that another time, but that's a fascinating question. But that's not for now. But that's a very good question. But yeah, it's part of the philosophy of our generation called postmodernism. And if you understand what postmodern philosophy is, you'll understand why these are the choices that this generation is making. It's a whole fact. There's a famous movie called The Matrix that was filmed about 22 years ago.
Everybody's coming out.
And they're coming out with a new version right now, like the fourth installation of the 4-part series that's coming out right now. Anyway, so if you look at the names of the directors, the guys who wrote the film and filmed the movie were called the Wachowski brothers. The Wachowski brothers are no longer directing the 4th movie. The Wachowski sisters are now filming and directing the fourth movie. Yeah, both of them, both brothers did. Yeah. So now, I don't know. I can't explain it to you, but if you understand, if you understand.
Conspiracy about ruining the world, the society. There's a conspiracy.
Society comes in waves. Remember that society often goes in stages. Like we'll see that. Like you had the Roman period. At the end of the Roman period, was horrible. There was crazy amounts of promiscuity and debauchery and all sorts of horrible, immoral acts that were happening. And that brought in the time of the Dark Ages, which is also very bad. And that led into a very conservative era later on with the Renaissance and so on and so forth. And you see this happening even in America. In the 1920s was a very promiscuous place in America. And that brought in almost 50 years of conservatism until the late 60s and the early 70s, which was a swing away from conservatism. That's your generation, right? So that's your generation. The 60s and the 70s, they're responsible for what's going on in the world today. But you're seeing right now, even I think politically.
Some of us stayed way back in the 50s.
That's right. Some of them did. Some of them did. And I think even right now, what's happening politically in America, and I'm not talking about parties, but I'm saying like the Trump insanity is fueled from a desire for people to pull back progressives. I'm not saying that he's, him and his followers were crazy, but I'm saying the idea that today you have this rift between a left and a right is really about humanity's desire to find a center. I really believe that. It's not about we only hear about the extremes in society, but society is looking for a center, and right now we don't have a center. Yeah, it's part of lots of things. Okay, let's see the Rambam. Maimonides, Hilchot Teshuvah. He says permission is given to every individual to direct himself to follow a good path and become a righteous, or to follow a bad path to become evil. This is what is written in the Torah. And now man is like one of us, knowing good and evil. So according to Rambam, when we read that man is becoming good and evil, that is us having free will. This means a human being is unique in creation in the aspect that through his intelligence he can distinguish between good and evil and can choose to do either, and there is no one who will prevent him from doing so. So Maimonides is in the position that we have free will, and that's what it means that we could choose bachar between good and bad. Rav Chaim Freelander in Tzitei Chachamim, in Chaim, he says as follows: each person has a spiritual soul that is connected to God above. In this world, God places the spiritual soul into the body of a physical person. It is true that the powers of nature were created by the rules of cause and effect, but the soul of the spiritual person, which is connected to God above, is beyond the rules of reason. The soul is not enslaved by any natural laws, but only to doing the will of God. Although a person has unique capabilities and characteristics which challenge or facilitate his freedom to choose, yet the choice between good or bad is through the spiritual soul, which is not compelled by the person's constitution. And what he's saying over there is that his opinion is like this: it's true that there is a nature, there's a part of us that is determined, and that is your nature, right? Your inner core traits. Like some of you have a predisposition to being calm. Some of you have a predisposition to being calm, or a predisposition to being happy, or a predisposition to being suspicious. Whatever your predisposition is, that is what he would say is your earthy body part. The part of you that's struggling with that is your soul that's trying to align that imbalance in you to try to move you to a place of moral clarity, of character development, and so on and so forth. That desire to want to be something more than what you are is coming from your spiritual soul, the spiritual plane. That can't be tainted. But he's saying that it's truth on some level, that there is a deterministic aspect to our nature and our being which comes from our bodies, not from our souls. So now you have two ideas. One is that you could do whatever you want. You could choose to be whoever you want, good or bad. But be aware that there is a certain nature inside of you that lends itself to a certain kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And now, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck. That doesn't mean that behavior defines you. I know of a friend who has a son who started playing with dolls. And he's freaking out. He's playing with dolls. What am I going to do? This and that. He plays with the gross clothing, and I'm going crazy. What should I do? So I said, listen, I don't think he's a girl, if you're asking me. I think that a child often likes to explore and play and imagine all kinds of things. Just do what you can to make sure he gets some male, figurines make sure he's not just watching girl shows, make sure he's watching some Batman. Try to create something that brings that balance in that kid's life so that he's able to kind of figure out his own identity, because identity is a difficult thing for a kid. This was 5 years ago. Today, the kid doesn't play with dolls. He doesn't work. He's not in that world. But can you imagine that if you were a parent today who believed in determinism, and therefore the nature determines what your identity is, then we would encourage that person to go through a gender change. That's what's happening today.
This is happening now.
Yeah, because they've bought into this notion that you can't change. You are who you are. You're born. You're more feminine. Probably a girl. I had a kid when I used to be the rabbi at on campus at Brooklyn College, and I had a lot of the kids from Flatbush and other yeshivot. All the Jewish kids on campus. About 5,000 Jewish kids on campus. There's one kid who was a Flatbush graduate, who was a little what we call metrosexual, right? He had a high-pitched voice. What? Metrosexual. It means metrosexual means that he's a man, but like he dresses with very tight clothing, has a very high pitched voice, speaks with his hands, and therefore it kind of creates this. Are you sure? Why don't you come out of the closet? I can't tell you how many times I heard people say this to him. When are you coming out of the closet? When are you coming out of the closet? He had a girlfriend. He had no problem being with girls before. And he was in college, he was at a frat party, and there was a couple of guys that were drunk, and they pushed him into a situation which he was never have done on his own, and he enjoyed it. And that convinced him that he was really gay. And he left his family, left his community, and now he's living with this guy, Park Slope, and that's it. He left everything behind, he's gone.
No, but that doesn't always happen.
I'm telling you, it happens more often than you think it does.
There are kids who know from very, very young what their feelings are and what their attractions are, and you can't deny it. You can't say that.
I'm not saying that listen, this guy had a girlfriend for 2 years.
So what? How many
So
gay
you
men
changed.
are married?
But what to be gay just means that you could find pleasure in someone of the same sex. That doesn't mean that you have to upend your lifestyle and that you don't enjoy having any kind of pleasure from the opposite sex. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I understand.
Meaning there's just like there are levels, degrees of homosexuality. Okay, there are degrees in our nature. Not always an extreme. There's an in-between space. And it's very possible that this kid could have been in a marriage, could have been in a relationship, but yeah, he had some tendencies. But that doesn't mean you should leave everything behind and walk away. When we create a society that tells us that you're determined, that this is what you are, and you can't be anything else, there's no room for space anymore. This is what cancel culture is. It's the same
In
thing.
that case, this guy, I don't know, this is being recorded, but in that case, this guy was being programmed as feminine, as metrosexual as
Right.
he was. He was programmed in a yeshiva world, in a community that's telling him, no, you gotta have a girlfriend, you gotta get married, and this and that. So maybe
Right.
that part was against his nature.
But
And
But-
when he found his true nature, then that's the way he went.
you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Let's say what you said is true, and that his nature was that.
Right.
Who says that that's what he has to do?
Well, that's a whole other.
No, but that's the point of this conversation, right? Meaning, if someone has the urge, and I'm not saying they're the same, God forbid, if there's, they did a study in the 70s that something like 82% of all rapists were never nursed by their parents. Some crazy number. Yeah, they never nursed them. Yeah, and they create some kind of correlation there, whatever. Anyway, Keith's story is like this. Now, a kid, let's say for whatever it is, decides that he has a crazy urge. He sees a girl in the street, okay, and he wants her. In a deterministic society, right? He can't control himself. It's not his fault. By the way, this is happening today with pedophilia. You know they want to take pedophilia off of DSM-4? DSM-4 is the book of... No, the DSM-4 is a book of the diagnostics of all psychological, diseases. Pedophilia is a disease where an older man wants to have pleasure with a younger boy. Okay, so right now there are fights in court to remove that illness from the DSM-4, because who says you have the right to say what kind of pleasure this person could have?
This is crazy.
But this is the world that you're living in.
But it's illegal anyway.
No, they want to make it legal now.
They You will also be able to merge your vote and your...
100%, 100%. I agree with you 100%.
Because the fact that we have allowed
Right. We went too far already.
to go so far that today they can raise children.
Right.
A surrogate, nobody even, I love it how humanity is so nice, and it's okay to take a woman who's so cool, okay, get her pregnant for another thing and another mixing everything, and she's doing it because frankly she wants to feed her children that she has
Right.
on her own.
Right.
And that's fine, because they are celebrities, and we want to see it. We've allowed the whole thing as society to go, because we believe we don't have the answer, that we cannot. Your arguments is exactly what always was. Is it enzyme? Is it something in our blood that we're born like this? Or it's a choice? Because the choice can be made different. I also in the beginning thought, oh man, but we have a very, very good friend with son. He came and he says, I'm gay. And he lived with the guy for a long, long time. But because he was brought up in a religious home, he made an intellectual decision.
Right.
That that's not the way of life he wants. He's married, he's got 2 children with a woman, and he's got 2 children because he made a choice. He realized that he is the one that maybe something is not.
Right.
You know why? And because we don't have today to look at all of them and tell them, you know what?
Dominate your
Something is wrong.
passions.
100%. 100%. If you allow your passions to dominate you, you're in trouble.
But the problem is that nowadays at schools,
The one who holds the
best
picture
schools
in this room
Yeah.
the teachers
is the ones
the
that do
boys,
whatever he wants, including
teachers
getting married to his
who
daughter.
are 11
It will
years
become
old.
kosher.
If you feel
Yes,
like you want to be
there
a
will be a
girl,
guy who
it's
says, I'm
alright.
laughing
It's
my
okay if
daughter
you
to
want
have
to be a
sex with
girl.
him and get married to him.
So my
Why are you
grandson
laughing
told
at that?
me,
Why is it
you should
okay
told me
that
that.
you're not laughing the 2 men?
Why did
or
you tell
2
me
women?
that?
I'm getting married to each other. Because
you want the society to become
but today,
Crazy.
You will compare to it. Society
Insane.
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 Right?
I think it's insane. Yes. I think that when you create, there's a ladies, there's a great expression that I often use, which says that when you're too open-minded, your brain falls out. Right? And this is what happens to our society. They want to be so open-minded and so concerned about everything, they're not even thinking straight anymore. Very, very stupid. Very stupid. Let's go on. Let's look at number 9, Avram Tursky.
And what if he has sex out of marriage with another
In general, animals are not free to make decisions. Ladies. Let's take it afterwards. Let's look at number 9. In general, animals are not free to make decisions because they are not at the mercy of the bodily impulses. If an animal is hungry, it is driven to look for food and must do so. An animal cannot decide not to eat when it's hungry. It's inconceivable that an animal will decide, I am going to fast today. This is equally true of all other physical impulses which totally dominate an animal's behavior. Man is alone in being able to resist a bodily urge and deny himself gratification of a strong desire if he considers it to be inappropriate. Some philosophers deny that man has freedom of choice and contend that a person has a number of impulses and ideas, some of which are in conflict, and that his behavior is determined by whichever impulse or idea happens to be the strongest. They say that because man is aware of the struggle within himself, and he has an illusion that he is making a choice, whereas the choice is really being made for him. Judaism categorically rejects this concept, which, by denying free will, essentially reduces a man to an animal level, with the only distinguishing feature being that a man is conscious of the struggle between the opposing forces within him. Freedom of choice is a fundamental axiom of Judaism. In fact, Judaism teaches that although God is in control of everything in the universe, he has divested himself of control over man's decisions and does not intervene in man's moral or ethical choices. And therefore, like he's saying it, that's super clear. Like that, I believe, is a Jewish way of understanding, this particular, conversation. Let's keep going because we lost a lot of time and it's getting late. The Ramban says as follows. He says the concept of a test is as follows. Since a man's actions are completely subject to his own will, so that he can act if he wishes to, or desists if he wishes, it is called a test from the vantage point of one being tested. The one who tests, however, is commanding him in order to actualize his potential so he can receive reward for proper actions, not merely for proper intentions. Know that God tests the righteous when he knows that the righteous man will do his will, and he desires to give that man merits. That is when he commands him to undergo a test. However, he does not test the wicked who will not listen. All the tests in the Torah are for the benefit of the one being tested. And therefore, from a spiritual place, Judaism says the challenges, the struggles that we have are unique tests to see what choices we're going to make. Are we going to allow ourselves to evolve into something more? Or are we going to remain in our base nature? The base nature, from a Jewish perspective, is never great. It could be okay, right? In Judaism, being good doesn't mean not avoiding bad. In Judaism, being good morally means, ready, proactively working on being good. If you're not proactively working on being good, in Judaism's eyes, you're not doing that good.
At what point does God say that this person is wicked, so he won't test?
I don't know.
It just says.
Yeah, he says it. I don't know. He's just making a point.
If you're not predetermined to be wicked, I mean, how do you know?
The only way a person becomes wicked is through his choices, because a child is born with the capacity to choose what he wants to do. I could have been a very wicked Jew. I chose not to be. I was set up to be a very wicked Jew, and I chose not to. I chose not wicked. I didn't know any better. I wouldn't call it wicked. I would call it ignorant. But I think that his point is like this: that the tests that we have in life, the challenges that we have in life, the moral struggles we have, are tests, opportunities for spiritual development. This is the Ramban Nachmanides. This is what he says. This is his opinion. Let's look at the Ramchal. Ramchal was Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, was my favorite writers, my favorite authors. People don't know this, but I would say he is the father of modern Hebrew. He wrote many plays, not Torah plays, like just plays in Hebrew, way before the state of Israel in the 17th century. He was a beautiful Italian rabbi. He used to wear a red cape and was clean shaven. Okay, but did not have a beard. He was hyper intellectual. He wore Renaissance clothing. He was not. If you saw him today, he would not look like a chassid or not look like your typical vision of what you would think a religious person is. But he was definitely a genius. He wrote most of his books by the age of 20. He died at a very young age. He died at 39 in Israel. He left Europe because Europe rejected him. They thought he was crazy. They thought he was a Shabtai Tzvinik. They thought he was a Mishachist. And he moved to Israel. He had 2 children and a wife that also died in a plague in Tiberia, and then a year later he died alone. Horrible story. The guy, what did he die of? I forgot the name of the plague. It was some kind of COVID. I don't know, some kind of plague. I don't know what it was. But his manuscripts actually survived. They're still around today. And if you want to see his manuscripts today, you could go to Moscow and find them there in the museum in Russia. So there's someone by the name of Ginsburg who has one of the largest libraries ever amassed by any one human being, and the communists took his library and wealth and gave it back to the government, and they preserved it. So because of that, the most important works, the Mesilat Yesharim and Derech Hashem, are his 2 most important works. The Ksav Yad, the actual handwritten texts that he wrote, are found in Russia today, and the Russian government. What's that? Yeah, Mesilat Yesharim. He was Italian.
Italian? What's his name?
His name was Moshe Luzzatto.
Luzzatto.
Yeah, Chaim Moshe Luzzatto. So he's brilliant. Everything he writes, I love. So he wrote a lot. The intellect knows that God is the ultimate good. By nature, anyone who is good desires to do good for others. And God, may his name be blessed, wanted to create creatures in order to bestow upon them good, because there's no opportunity to bestow goodness if there's no one to accept it. However, in order for this bestowing of goodness to be complete, God knew that those accepting it would need to earn it through their own efforts, because then they become rightful owners and they will not be embarrassed by accepting this goodness. Like the one who accepts charity from another. About this it says, one who eats something that is not his own is embarrassed to look directly in the face of his person. So what is he saying? He's saying that the reason why God created us with free will is so that the good that we get from God, we know that we earned it. It's ours. He did not want to create a society of charity cases. He did not want to create a people that were just looking for handouts. He wanted to empower humanity to choose to act in the right way, so that whatever they have in life, they can appreciate and feel like it's their own. And therefore, Bechira is an essential component that gives man and woman the opportunity of earning their good. It's your choice. Your actions will determine the good that you get, not the circumstances that will determine the good that you get. Reb Chaim Volozhin, Nefesh Chaim, he says something. He says this from a spiritual perspective. We're on source number 12 on top of page 4. It is for this reason that man alone was granted free will, so that he could bring himself in all the worlds to whichever side he chooses. Or even if he already transgressed and caused the world to be ruined and destroyed, heaven forbid, he has the ability to rectify that which he has ruined and rebuild that which he has destroyed, since he is included in partnership with all the worlds. What's he talking about? The Ramchal believed that everything that we do here impacts the world of spirituality. So, for example, he says that when the Titus, the Roman general that came to destroy the Second Temple, he says that the walls of the temple were destroyed before Titus destroyed them.
Why?
Because everything in the physical world is a manifestation of something that's happening on a spiritual plane. This table is here and exists right now because there's a mirror image of this in a spiritual plane that gives this physical object the spiritual nourishment to exist. Right? You are here animated, thinking, because you have a neshama, a soul, that animates the body that you're in. But no, the root part of your neshama is on a spiritual plane. And therefore, Rav Chaim Volozhin argues that when Titus came to destroy the walls of the Beit Mikdash, it was destroyed not by him, but by us. That the spiritual underpinnings that make the wall a wall in the upper ashlans in the spiritual realm were destroyed by our actions, which is what gave him the ability of destroying the walls in this lower realm over here. And therefore, Bechira itself, the choice that we are given, is a choice to either build or destroy, God forbid, what he would say the upper and lower worlds. That our positive actions have an impact on a spiritual plane, which ultimately in turn have an action and impact on a lower, on a physical plane. And they go back and forth, back and forth. So that's what he says free will is for. But Rashi in Gemara and Brachot, number 13, says everything that is placed on a person is decreed by God. For instance, whether the person is tall, short, poor, rich, or smart, dull, light, dark, is all decreed by heaven. But whether a person is righteous or evil is not decreed by heaven, but is entrusted to the individual's choice. He has two paths in front of him, and he needs to choose to fear heaven or not to fear heaven. That's your choice. That's what makes you human. Hakol bidei shemayim, chutz mirat shemayim, we say. Everything's in the hands of heaven except for the fear. That's your choice. Your choice is to whether or not everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. Right? That's up to you. How much do you want to fear? How much you don't? Like, that's a personal thing. Like, some of us are like the Quakers. I call it the Charedim, right? That's what the Quakers were. People who are mamish like terrified. They're always trembling because every second God may zap them. That's one level of fear, which I think is unhealthy, right? And then there's someone else. Like, there's different spectrum of people that relate to fear of heaven, right? I try not to think of the fear of heaven. I try to think of awe, a yirah, not as fear, but as awe. And that means that instead of, I had a rabbi who tried convincing one of my groups once when I was in Israel that, that the same way a child is afraid of his father hitting him is the same way you need to be afraid of God. I'm like, that's the worst possible. First of all, like, why is your child? I don't think it's healthy for a child to walk around always, being afraid of being, zapped by his dad. And certainly I don't want a relationship like that with God. I think it's different. I said, don't you think it's a healthier relationship to create a reality where a son is in awe of his father, that he doesn't want to disappoint his father? Isn't that a healthier relationship?
I always think about the pasuk in where Yosef is on the verge of doing something wrong, and then he visits his father.
Father stops him, yeah.
So that's always what I
Beautiful.
imagine to be fear of Hashem.
Hashem, that's beautiful. That's awe, yeah.
Can I say something that God declared if I be tall, short, poor, rich, etc. This means that I can have a time against God. I chose bad, or you decided I chose bad, but then I'm blaming you because I couldn't deal with the way you declared me to be poor, or ugly, or short, etc. I couldn't live in the world that you declared me to live in it with these inabilities. There is an argument I can have with God about it.
Why?
I never thought about God decreeing whether we are ugly or
Yeah.
short or tall. That I never.
Well, think about it like this, meaning like if God gave you what you have, it's because that's what you need. if you don't have what you think you need, it's because God thinks that you don't need it. This is part of the philosophical issue with prayer. We often relate to tefillah. Well, I'm going to shul, the Knesset, and I really need a new car, or I need extra whatever it is, or I need whatever I need, right? And we're asking God for it. But if God
Doesn't give it to you.
hasn't given it to you, maybe it's because it's bad for you, and maybe you asking is the wrong thing. There's a philosophical issue. If God knows everything,
I chose it.
you did. Yes, it's true. You chose it.
My parents.
You didn't choose your parents.
I know.
There's certain things that you're born with, and those things that you're born with help create the tapestry that ends up becoming you. And therefore, I would argue that, for better or for worse, the parents, the community, the society, the time in history that you were born in is all perfectly positioned, precise precision, to give you the exact amount of bechira that you need to make your own choices. That's what he's saying.
I chose to do plastic surgery.
You could. You could. That could be part of your choice, and maybe that's what God wants from you. There are circumstances where, some people, maybe they should. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to evaluate, and I would never tell anyone to do that. But I've certainly know other rabbis that have told other people that just get plastic surgery. It'll solve it. Yes. I would never say that to anyone, but yeah, here's my guy. He'll take care of you. 10% discount. Tell him the rabbi sent you. Yeah. What?
How did God allow people to change sexes?
We're still going back to that. I don't know. I don't know. I will do another class on that'll be like.
It's very shocking that they're doing it, and it's okay.
I don't think it's. Listen, I think there's a different. This is a very broad conversation. I don't want to do it now.
Yeah.
Let's come back. We're almost finished. I have like one more sheet over here. I want to get through it. I have two more sheets over here. And we're going to finish it. We're going to finish it right now. I want to get through this. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, number 14. He says, when two nations are engaged in warfare, the war is fought on the battlefield. All the territory conquered by one particular army is now under its control, and the enemy has no foothold there whatsoever. Similarly, the territories of the second army comes totally under its control. If one of the armies conquers further ground and advances and takes over some of the enemy's territory, then the subsequent battles will resume with the new battle lines. But the territory which has already been conquered will not be fought over again, for it has already been occupied. There is only one battleground, and this can shift between territories of the two warring armies. Okay, so what's he saying? The way Bechira works is like this. Okay, you have a line right here in the middle. Okay? And sometimes, you're feeling like, I need to go on a diet and I'm going to choose not to eat the cake. And you're conquering this land over here. Okay, now you're not eating cake. Because you know that cake is bad for you right now. You need to lose some weight. But then you go to an event and there's this crazy amount of like matzah that's being served and it looks really good. And you shouldn't have it, but you're on a diet. So now, what ends up happening is you lose ground. And you go back over here. Now, your Bechira point changes based on where you're at. Right? And this is the point that he's making, that it's not like I have this infinite amount of free will to do whatever I want. For example, can I turn on my light switch on Shabbat? Do I have the free will to do that? The answer is yes, but I'm never going to do it. It's not even within my free will. And therefore, I would say to you that no, I have no bechira when it comes to being mechalel Shabbat in that way on Shabbat. Unless it's for saving a life, there's no way you're going to get me to turn a light switch off on Shabbat. Not happening. Why? Because I've worked on myself and that's not my issue anymore. So there's a limitation to my free will, that I can graduate myself into a place where that's no longer my issue. Like, I'm not struggling with kosher anymore. I used to struggle with kosher. Finding kosher food was always a problem for me. It's no longer an issue. I don't struggle. It's not a choice for me. Like, I can't eat treif anymore. I overcame that already. That's not my bechira anymore. You know what I'm saying? I have other issues. Can I pray with kavanah? Am I sensitive enough to the people that I'm teaching? Am I putting in enough hours in developing my courses and so on and so forth? Like, that's where my struggle is, right? But it's no longer with the small things. And that's part of life, is growing into someone that no longer deals with the old stuff. You want to free your bandwidth so you can worry about bigger and better things. So that's what he's saying over here. But look what he says. He continues. He says the same is true of the nature of free choice. Each person has a zone of free choice where this conception of truth encounters his imagined truth, which is really falsehood. right? Because everyone knows that what's bad for you is bad for you. You have two desires: the desire to be healthy and the desire to eat your cake. Which one's more important? Desire to be healthy. Why? Because you don't want to have pain. You don't want to suffer. So why does a desire for that fleeting pleasure of that nice chocolate cake always beat the desire for you to be in a healthy place where you want to avoid pain? That's the falsehood. However, the majority of one's actions occur where there is absolutely no conflict between truth and falsehood, since a person has been educated to act in many areas in accordance with the truth. When he does so, he is not exercising his free will, since he has no option to do otherwise. Similarly, he might make incorrect decisions based on falsehood and not realize that these are important actions, since he is accustomed to doing them. They are now beyond the range of his free will. Decisions of free choice are limited to the meeting ground between the positive and the negative forces within the individual. For example, many people might be negligent in speaking derogatory about others, only because they are accustomed to it and are oblivious to its severity. The very same people, however, would never consider stealing or murder because their education has ingrained in them not to do so, to the extent that they have no inclination to do such a thing. The zone of free choice is dynamic as a result of good decisions. A person raises his moral level so that those areas which were previously on the battleground between his positive and negative inclinations are now incorporated into the zone of his good side and will no longer present a conflict. This is the principle of mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. The converse is also true. Aveira goreret aveira. Bad decisions push away a tendency to behave properly in the battle zone and subsequently lead to one to act improperly without deliberation, since his good side is no longer in control there. This is the principle that one bad deed leads to another. Okay? He's making it clear that every choice that we have, every circumstance that we are in, is uniquely designed for us to go ahead and achieve some level of growth and clarity. And when we fail to do that, we are stuck. I just want to do one more over here and we'll stop. You could do the last piece on your own. Michtav Eliyahu says sometimes a person becomes accustomed to doing so much good that he is protected from the evil inclination in that area. And his zone of free choice is in more sublime areas. For instance, for a person who is educated in the Torah way among righteous people, his zone of free choice will not be with regard to committing an actual sin or refraining from an actual mitzvah, but rather with regard to the very subtle point in his inner service of God and pure intent. Sometimes a person might be brought up in the company of evildoers, rabbis, and thieves. He will not have the choice at all regarding whether to steal or desist. It is possible that his zone of free choice will exist only when he is caught in the act of stealing and has the opportunity to murder someone. This is where the battle between inclinations will take place, for that is the truth that his good inclination can discern in his level, and he can ignore his evil inclination. So we see that a person's upbringing does not change the actual struggle of free choice at all, but only the point at which it takes place. Everyone is created with the ability to discern the truth that he can access at his level and to cling to it, not to ignore it, even in the face of the temptation of superfluous justification, regardless of whether his upbringing is raised lower to the point of free choice. His ability to recognize the knowable truth is identical in every situation, and therefore we believe as Jews that the circumstance that we find ourselves in is unique to give us the power to overcome the natures that we have.
I have a question.
Yes.
That's something I was never able to understand. I took a whole course in Bar-Ilan. We had to take like 7 courses in Judaism. One of them was like free will. I studied like half a year. I still don't like. The only thing I took out of it is like the free will you have is between good and bad.
Right.
But I believe everything is like from Hashem.
Yeah.
Everything is coming from Him. So
Yeah.
like if someone decides to murder someone else, so that person that was murdered, this was like from Hashem. Like this was a thing from Hashem, no?
100%.
Also, another question that always comes to my mind, like there are so many like intermarriages, like Jews married like non-Jews, and like I always like think about it. If those people got married, then God allowed it. Like if that Jewish girl married this Christian guy, this
Yeah, he does. He does. God willing, next week we're going to. It isn't. One second. Let me explain. I just want to end this. I need to end this video before it hits 60 seconds. Otherwise, I can't upload it. And I have 30 seconds left. Okay, I just want to say thank you for listening, and God willing, next week we're going to double click on this again, and I'm going to try to show you another perspective of a whole bunch of other sources, because this is an opinion, right? I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm showing you what people in the past have thought about this, and I think there's a lot of merit to these different ideas. Obviously, you need to figure it out for yourselves. Wishing you an amazing week. Thank you so much for listening.